All right, guys, what's going on? Captain Cody Davis here for another episode of Tight Splice Charters. And this isn't going to be a real fish catchy video. This is going to be more of like a tip and technique video for you guys. And basically what we're going to be talking about today is punching. I've been getting a ton of messages and questions, or messages with questions on this specific technique. Sorry, I can't talk right now. And I'm not sure why. You know, it's kind of perfect timing. We're coming into fall. Fall is officially hit here in South Florida. It's you could definitely feel a change in the air, feel a change in the temperature, and not only is it going to make the fishing better, and it's not only going to make it more comfortable for you to spend a day fishing out on the lake now, but a lot of different tips or a lot of different techniques are now going to play a vital role in you catching a big bag of fish when out here on Lake Okeechobee, or even anywhere out really in the state of Florida. You know, techniques that maybe worked during the summer but don't really excel that time of year are now going to start excelling and being, playing a vital role in catching not only a lot of fish but big fish out on the lake. And punching is definitely one of them. As we roll into these colder months and the water temperature continues to drop, these fish are really going to seek out that thick, heavy cover, that hydrilla, the hyacinth, the pennywort mats, even the water lettuce, dying and laid over cattails, chopped grass mats from the eelgrass, peppergrass, things like that are all excellent things to punch to catch not only a lot of fish, but big fish as well. And I've been getting a lot of questions. I don't know if it's from people, a lot of it is from people in other states fishing smaller bodies of water, fishing bodies of water where punching isn't really like a staple, but it's a way, there's a spot or two or three on their body of water where they are able to punch, and it might be good for a bite or two on a tough day. And I've also had a lot of people messaging me about wanting to get into, trying to perfect their punching techniques out here on Lake Okeechobee. Some people that have never picked it up before, and they're just trying to give it a shot. So I figured I'd just go ahead and kind of run through the gamut of how I look at punching, what I use, rods, reels, line, baits, things like that, and let you guys know what works for me. Again, this is what works for me. I am not a touring pro. I am not no means a professional. I'm not a punching professional either, even though I will say it's probably, if not my favorite, my top 3 favorite ways to catch a bass, and it's probably my favorite. It's real close contact, one-on-one, big hook, big rod, big line, not necessarily big bait, but it's basically just a tug of war, pulling out hopefully the biggest bass in the lake out of the thickest stuff on the lake. And that's what I like. So it's kind of a nuanced deal, so I'll kind of just jump into it and tell you guys what works for me. So we'll kind of get right into it. Oh my God, almost just knocked everything over. So this is the rod and reel. This is my punching setup that I'm using right now, and I'm extremely, extremely happy with it. Before we kind of get everything, we're just going to go piece by piece. So we're going to start with the reel. This is a Shimano Corrado I. This is one of the later models of the Corrado. Been a big fan of the Corrados since I was 10 years old, and this model is great. Here's the thing. We'll start with the shape of the reel. Get you a reel that fits in your hand extremely comfortably, especially if you're new to punching, right? You don't want something that feels clunky, something that maybe feels too big, maybe it feels too small. You want something that you can palm extremely comfortably and is not going to fatigue you at all. These Corrado I's, in my opinion, they fit my hand the best. I have, 8 or 9 of them, I feel like, and they just, boom. I mean, it just feels comfortable. You're not struggling to try and get a good handle on it. You just fits in your hand perfect. That's number one. And I'm not saying to go out and buy Shimano. I mean, play around with reels. Pick up something that feels good to you. The next thing is, this is like a $170 reel, which is expensive, but it's also in like the mid-range class of the Shimanos, right? In my experience, this is the line of reel that you want to use when using a technique like this, like punching, where you're using heavy line, the drag's locked down, and you're going to be putting a lot of torque and a lot of force on the fish and on the reel. You want that mid-class. You go up to those $400 or $500 reels that everyone thinks are the best. The biggest thing that these manufacturers look at when they produce a very expensive reel like that is weight, right? So you pick up those $600 reels and man, they feel like if you dropped it, it would just float or float like a feather down. That's great and all, but a lot of times those reels can't withstand the force and the torque you're putting on them when using them for an application like punching. They just give out. Things torque, twist, break. So that mid-range reel, whether you go with the Shimano Corrado, whether you go with the Abu Garcia STX, whether you go with a Luz Super Duty, a Daiwa Tatula, I mean, just that mid-range $150 to $200 reel is what's going to be best for you and hold up the longest in this application, I believe. So you don't have to buy the most expensive thing. Second, gear ratio. This is a 7:2-to-1. And the big thing with punchers or people that like to flip and punch right now is high gear ratios. I'm not that way. 7:2-to-1, this is perfect for me. I think I have a couple that might be an 8-to-1, and to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of it. You don't want it too slow to where it takes you 3 minutes to reel in to reflip because, you know, being efficient and fluent is very key in this technique. But you don't want it too high to where when you set the hook on a big one, you can't turn that handle. What you gain in speed, you're going to lose in torque every time. With this presentation, when you set the hook on a fish, you want to keep that handle coming, even if it is a little bit hard to turn, but you just want to keep them winching and keep that fish's momentum coming to you, and you're going to land more fish. If you set the hook and you can't turn the handle because you got an 11-to-1 or an 8-to-1 or a 9-to-1 gear ratio, that ain't doing you no good. So 7-to-1 is best for me, and it's still fast enough to where I can only, you know, when I make a flip, stroke the bait a couple times, it's only 5 or 6 turns of the handle, and I'm on to my next flip. So those are a couple things to keep in mind. Braid. This is a strictly braid application. You know, don't try it with fluoro, don't try it with mono. That's just number one. Now your braid is going to vary. You know, if you're on a body of water, like I mentioned before, where there's just a couple key spots where you might be able to get a punching bite, you know, some of your stuff might not be as thick and heavy. Whereas I'm using on this one, this is an 1.5 ounce weight. You might be able to get by with a 3/4, and you might be able to get by with 30-pound braid, and you might get more bites with the lighter line. I use 65 exclusively. I've played with the idea of going to 50 a couple times because you got to think, I mean, you're not really doing these big nasty hook sets like we'll get into. You are putting a lot of pressure on them, but 50-pound braid is still pretty hard to break, and that 50-pound could possibly help you get through the mat a lot easier. But for now, I'm kind of just stuck on the 65. It's a confidence thing. And I think I don't like 80. 80's too thick for me. 65 is where I feel comfortable. And this is the Suffix 832 braid. I'm going to give you this also. I've mentioned before I fish a lot of the Suffix Performance braid, which I don't think they even make anymore. It's the cheaper stuff. I feel like that stuff, you will never break it, but it's real stiff. It's only a 6-carrier braid, which means it's not as smooth, which means it has more resistance on the leaves, the chopped grass, the things when trying to go through a mat, and your bait might not fall as fluently as it would with this 8-carrier braid. So I'd go with the smoothest braid that you can get your hands on, whatever you like. This 832 falls, it flips real smooth, it falls through the mat nice. And at the end of the day, you want it to be as efficient as possible with this technique. You want that thing just sliding through that mat with ease. And the other thing, I'm sure you've heard a lot of other pros and YouTube guys talk about it. When you're pumping this bait in a mat, when you're making that, you want as least of that sawing noise as you can. That Suffix Performance braid I used to fish, and I still do fish, it does saw. You really hear it. Power Pro, it saws. I mean, you could hear it from 100 yards away, I feel like. And it might not make a difference, but to me, when these mats get pressured, I think Mikey Balls did a video on this as well, that seesawing noise being as least as possible, I feel like it's going to get you more bites. So that Daiwa Samurai braid is a real popular one. I myself haven't played with it yet, but a lot of pros, a lot of people who really excel in this technique really like the Daiwa Samurai. I just haven't played with it. This stuff doesn't break. It's smooth. It's quiet. I like it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. All right, so that's what I flip with. The rod. This is an ARC 711 Invoker Pro Heavy. A very big misconception a lot of people get with this technique is that you need a broomstick of a rod, and that's the complete opposite of what you want. You want a rod that's stiff, but you want a rod that's got a little bit of tip I can't really show you because it's almost 8 foot and I'm out of frame, but 8 foot, so it gives a tip, just loads enough so you can make accurate flips, right? And it just makes it easier on you to lay that bait, lay that weight in the mat. Okay, but you also want a rod that's very parabolic and loads for that when you do get the bite and you set the hook on that fish, that it loads and it's giving. The reason you want that is when you're flipping a big weight, which we'll get into, this is an 1.5 ounce weight. When that fish comes up thrashing and going crazy and that weight, you just want that rod to take that load of that weight moving around too, and it's going to keep that weight more, keep the line tighter with that weight driving around, which is going to in turn keep that weight from doing this and popping that big hook out of that fish's mouth, right? So you want a rod that's going to load up. And the biggest thing also with that is when you're doing this technique and you get a bite, everyone thinks you need to just rear back and try to break the rod. That's not what I do at all. I'm going to be stroking the bait, get the bite, I lift, let that tip load up just a little bit, and just do this. I'm doing this backwards because I've been using my other hand and everything. But you just want to do a hard pull. 100% tight line hook set. Reel down so you feel the weight of that fish. You see that rod bending to the second eye, and then just pull back hard. With these big weights, this is an 1.5 ounce tungsten weight. Okay, this is what I use 99% of the time. I really try to stay away from a 2 ounce weight, just because a 2 ounce weight is just so much bigger, right? You got to think, this fish grabs this bait and you set the hook and yank, it's just going to blow their mouth open and you never hook the fish. If you just pull into them, it's just going to basically snug that hook right into their top of their lip, and that's where you want it to be. 65-pound braid. I run 1 bobber stop. I just watched a thing on Wire to Fish, actually. Tharp was just talking about this. You know, I want that weight to slide as far away from that fish when he's hooked so he doesn't have any leverage to spit it. So 2 bobber stops, 3 bobber stops like I've seen. Sometimes it'll keep that weight pinned too close to that hook, and it's just too much for that. It's too much leverage you're giving to that fish. I like for that weight to slide away, so I use 1 bobber stop. This is an 1.5 ounce tungsten. This is the ARC 1.5 ounce. It's powder coat. It's just a great weight, but it really don't matter. Whatever weight you guys like will work. And, you know, the weight, this 1.5 ounce weight might scare some people. You might think, wow, that's so big. You will catch 8-inch fish flipping this big ass weight. Don't let the weight of the weight scare you. It's really, at the end of the day, it's an 1.5 ounces. That's nothing. You know, I mean, if you're throwing a big Senko, sometimes they weigh 2 ounces. You don't feel it because it's dispersed into a 7-inch bait, but that 1.5 ounces is nothing to those fish. So don't be scared of the weight, even the 2 ounce. That 2 ounce is just so much heavier. I feel like it blows their mouth open. So if I can get by with an 1.5 ounce weight, that's what I'm going to do. And then sometimes I don't have to use an 1.5 ounces. Sometimes I'm just flipping straight chopped eelgrass, and I can get by with a 1 ounce. That's what I'm going to do, but you don't want to go too less to where every time you flip, you're stuck shaking that bait, shaking that weight to get it to fall through. You want it to just go through as quiet and easy as possible, because at that rate, you're going to make more flips throughout a day, and you're going to catch and get more bites. So don't shoot yourself short on too light of a weight also. A little trick I'll give you, instead of having this weight pinned down with that bobber stop like this, give yourself about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. And what this does is, if you flip and you land on a mat and the bait doesn't go through and you can shake that rod tip, you see how it gives that weight some freedom? Sometimes that weight will drop down first and it'll just carry your bait through. Whereas if you have this pulled super tight, you're moving the whole bait, and sometimes that bait's harder to get to fall through that mat. So just that little bit of play, you can let it flop and it'll go straight through. The hook I'm using, this is a Strike King Hack Attack hook. Okay, this is a 5/0. A lot of people like the 4s because it's smaller, compact presentation. This is one place where I don't skimp. I like the 5/0 hook. Yes, it could be smaller to go through a mat a little easier, but I feel like that 5/0 sticks out around the side of that weight a little bit more, and you're more amped to get a good hookup ratio. If you hook a big fish, it's not going to open up. There's a bigger gap there, and it still fits my punching baits very well. So that's what I use. Gamakatsu makes a great one. You know, whatever works for you, works for you. Play around with it. That's the hook I use. I do not snell my hooks. I don't. I simply do a uni knot, and it's never failed me. I've never lost a fish. And the reason I don't snell is because everyone's seen the trick where you pull it up and it snaps that hook up. In my experience, what that did, every time I hit the top of a mat, I got hung up, ripped the bait, pull it through, and I just wasn't efficient. If you do this hook set, like I said, reel down, pull till you feel weight, and just do a hard pull back, you're not going to lose them. You're not going to miss them, and you're going to snag less grass and go through less baits than you would if you were snelling. I promise you. Go and watch Brandon Polinick's video, to snell or not to snell, and that'll also make you look at it a little bit different. And that's about it. You know, as far as baits, I've got a handful here. Let me put this down. So this is pretty much kind of what I stick with, right? You've got basically the beaver cross style bait, and it's going to fall through the mat just fine. You just want to find something that's going to hold your hook the best it can. And color is not a big deal. Anything dark, so they see that dark silhouette, and that's going to work. Probably my go-to is this burner crawl. I just think it falls through the mat the best. And what I'll do is I'll actually pull these little appendages off, just so there's the least amount of stuff for that mat to get hung on that mat, the better. I really like the Missile Baits D-Bomb. You guys know that, but it is really soft, which I like for pitching when you're pitching to sparse reeds. Gives the bait more action. It's just a lot easier to pull that hook through. But when you're flipping those mats, a lot of times your hook will pull through and it'll get you hung up. Reaction Innovations Beaver is a great one as well, and the Bruiser Baits Crazy Crawl. But at the end of the day, oh, threw the wrong one now. I take that burner crawl. I'm going to bite the top off so that weight has a nice flat surface to lay on. And basically push that through. This is in color back at you. They make black blue, black silver blue, or shadow blue, all these different colors. But a dark color is going to get it done 365, and that's how it should sit. And you see I took the little appendages off because I really don't think that matters. I just want this to fall through the mat as effortlessly as possible. You're going to make more flips and get more bites. And you can see that hook hides in that bait perfect. It's still streamlined, and it's not too big and too bulky. So that's it. Go through. That's what I use. That's how I fish it. And I basically make the punch. It falls through. As always, you want it to fall on a strict slack line. Let that thing just free fall down. Let it hit the bottom. Pump it up once. Let it fall. Twice. Let it fall. Third time, hold it at the top of the mat and give it a jiggle. If he ain't on there, reel it into the next one. Because 9 times out of 10, especially with your big bites, he's going to hit it as soon as that thing falls by his face, just like that. So that's what I use. If you guys have any questions, give me a call. Hopefully you guys get out there and do some of that yourself, because it's getting to be the right time. And appreciate you guys watching. Easy as that.